All right, so we're gonna go over how we choose our hurdle height. Now, it's important on your hurdle height that you don't go too high, right? Because the higher up the hurdle, the more force you have to create to get over it. The more force you have to create to get over it, the more time you have to take, right? So generally when we do hurdle hops, we're trying to build elasticity. We're trying to do these plyometrically, which means just sort of by common definition, we want to do a ground contact time that's under 0.2 seconds. Now that's relatively fast. And if you're a faster athlete, you might need to do even faster, like 0.15, 0.12, even down to 0.1. So we really want to be purposeful with how high we put our hurdles, especially when we start getting down to those ranges. It's very difficult for the human eye to tell what is the difference between 0.15 and 0.25. That's a fraction of a second, but it can make all the difference. So what I like to do, generally, we're gonna use a hurdle that is 12 to 18 inches tall to start with. If I've got a really young athlete, a really short athlete, maybe an athlete who's a little heavier, just someone where I have a sneaking suspicion that they're not very elastic to begin with, then we're gonna start on the lower end of that spectrum, so down around 12 inches. I'm gonna use an OVR jump placed between the hurdles, measuring ground contact time. So this is really gonna help me figure things out very fast and make sure that, again, all of our plyometric reps are actually plyometric. It's a simple concept, but it's one that most people, I don't think, are actually sure of whether what they're doing is technically fast enough to elicit the response that they want. So DJ here is going to demonstrate some for us. He's just going to do a couple bounds over these hurdles. These hurdles are only 3 feet apart. Because they're 3 feet apart, his force is going to be very vertical, right? So by being very vertical, he's going to have to take a little bit longer to get over the same height hurdle. Okay, so what we're gonna look for though is a ground contact time under 0.2, ideally down under 0.15, maybe 0.12 eventually for DJ. But we're gonna start off at 18 inches. Now this shouldn't be too challenging for him. Let's see. Okay. So 0.184, all right? So depending on how many hurdles you wanted to hop, this is a pretty good height for him. Now notice also 18 inches, while not being super high, it is still high enough that his hips do have to actually raise significantly in order for him to get over. So you're kind of walking that balance. You don't want him so low that he can just kind of kick his feet up behind him like that and not create force, right? So we need this to be high enough that he has to actually displace, but we don't want it so high that he has to land and gather and scoop, because then he's on the ground too long and we're not building up that elasticity of the ankle and the foot. So we're going to assume now that we can raise these hurdles up. So 21 inches, so we've raised it 3 inches. Now he's gonna go again. Okay, and so you see that by raising it 3 inches, suddenly his ground contact time goes up to 0.212. So he got a little bit slower. Now, I say you see that, but odds are you didn't, because what he basically did was he just spent another frame of a second on the ground. That's very difficult for you or I to see. As a coach, you'd have no clue. As an athlete, that probably doesn't feel too much different unless you are consistently jumping with a feedback device like the OVR jump, right? So if we went up even higher, say to 24 inches, now he's gonna jump through again. He's gonna try and beat that score, but we're gonna see, because it's going to be mathematically difficult because he has to create more force to get over that higher hurdle. All right, now he was actually able to get down just a hair to 0.204. So still not where we want as far as being well under 0.2 for DJ. For DJ, because he's a relatively mature athlete, because he has trained significantly before, he's capable of some high outputs. Ground contact is one of his weaker attributes. So we would try and drive that score down even further. But if DJ was, say, in 7th or 8th grade, 0.2 would be a great a great sort of cap to start at. But so that's all we would do, is we would just look at the height and move it up ever so slightly based on if you could get under 0.2 or not.